You're not in the system. The clerk's voice didn't just carry, it cut. I stood at the chipped laminate counter of the social services office, clutching a crumpled birth certificate and the last $20 in my pocket, just trying to get a basic health card. I'd spent 32 years believing I was a charity case, the daughter of a man who reminded me with every breath that I wasn't his blood. Try again, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. Elara Vance. Vance, the clerk didn't type. She stared at the monitor, her face draining of color until she looked like a ghost. Suddenly, the routine hum of the office died. A high-pitched, rhythmic chiming began to pulse from the ceiling, a Tier 1 lockdown. I watched, paralyzed, as heavy steel shutters rattled down over the exit. "Ma'am," the clerk said, her hands trembling so hard she had to grip the desk. "This ID isn't just invalid. It's a red flag entry for a global kidnapping cold case from 1994. My world didn't just tilt, it shattered. The steel shutters had barely hit the floor before the elevator chimed. A man stepped out, draped in a charcoal suit that cost more than my stepfather's entire house. He didn't run, he glided through the chaos of the lockdown lobby with a terrifying, quiet authority. The armed guards didn't stop him, they stepped aside like he was the one holding the leash. He stopped exactly 2 feet away, his eyes scanning my face with a hunger that made my skin crawl. It wasn't the look of a predator, though. It was the look of a man who had finally found a ghost. "The jawline is a perfect match," he murmured, ignoring the red strobe lights. He didn't ask for my name. He gave it back to me. "Welcome home, Elara. We've spent 32 years and $40 million looking for you." He slid a heavy, embossed folder onto the counter. "You were told you were a burden, a mistake of blood. But in Texas, you're the sole heiress to the Vance oil legacy." I couldn't breathe. The air in the room suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone powerful. The word heiress should have felt like a dream, but instead, it tasted like ash. I looked at the digital photos in the folder, a girl who looked like me, smiling in a sun-drenched garden, and suddenly, the sleek office walls dissolved. I was 7 years old again, shivering in a damp basement because Silas said the guest room was for real family. I remembered the weight of the heavy industrial mop, my small hands blistering as I scrubbed the floors of his workshop while his biological daughter, Sarah, tried on silk dresses upstairs. "That you're lucky I don't leave you at a fire station," Silas would sneer, his voice a low, rhythmic poison. "You're a mouth to feed that doesn't belong to me. You owe me every scrap you swallow." I spent 24 years believing I was a debt that could never be repaid. I thought he kept me out of pity. But looking at the Vance file, the truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. He didn't keep me because he was kind. He kept me because I was a human shield. I wasn't his charity, I was his leverage. He hadn't been raising a daughter, he had been hiding a stolen fortune in a basement that I finally let my guard down, the weight of the Vance legacy starting to settle in my bones. I reached for the glass of water the man in the suit had offered, but the glass never made it to my lips. The heavy security doors didn't just unlock, they were overridden with a screech of electronic feedback. 3 men in tactical gear burst through, and behind them, wearing a mask of fabricated grief, was Silas. He wasn't the man in the grease-stained overalls I knew. He was wearing a state-issued windbreaker, clutching a legal clipboard like a shield. "There she is," Silas shouted, his voice cracking with a practiced, frantic energy. "Thank God you found her. She's had another break." He didn't look at the investigator. He looked at the guards, shoving a notarized document into their hands. "I have an emergency psychiatric hold. My daughter has early onset dementia. She's been hallucinating about real parents for weeks. She's a danger to herself." He stepped toward me, his eyes dead and cold behind the fake tears. "Come on, Elara. Let's get you to the facility." The trap snapped shut. He wasn't trying to hide me anymore, he was trying to delete me. Silas's hand clamped onto my shoulder, but the investigator didn't flinch. "Hold it," the man in the charcoal suit said, his voice dropping to a sub-zero chill. He didn't reach for a weapon, he reached for a single, blue-inked ledger. "You're bold, Silas. Using a medical proxy to silence a witness? That's a classic play. But it's built on a foundation of sand. Silas sneered, waving his clipboard. The law says I'm her guardian. I've signed every form for 30 years, exactly, the investigator countered, flipping the ledger open. And that's where you hung yourself. You've been filing for state-funded kinship stipends for 3 decades. But the Vance Trust shows an anonymous benefactor has been depositing 6 figures annually into a private account in your name, money meant for Elara's care. The heir left the room. By claiming I wasn't his blood to get the state's money, while simultaneously stealing my real family's wealth, Silas hadn't just committed kidnapping. He'd committed systemic grand larceny. The paper trail didn't prove I was crazy, it proved he was a thief. Sign it, the investigator whispered, sliding a digital tablet across the mahogany. Silas let out a guttural roar, lunging forward, but the guards pinned him to the floor before he could even graze the desk. You can't do this, he screamed, his face turning a bruised shade of purple. That's 30 years of my life. That house, those accounts, they're mine. I looked down at him, not with fear, but with a cold, surgical clarity. Nothing was ever yours, Silas, I said, my voice steady for the first time in 32 years that I pressed my thumb to the scanner. The screen flashed green, asset transfer complete. In a single electronic heartbeat, the house I had scrubbed, the cars he had flaunted, and every cent he had laundered from my name vanished into a constructive trust. He wasn't just going to prison for federal fraud, he was going there penniless. As they dragged him out, the lobby doors opened to a different sound, the roar of a jet engine nearby and the frantic, sobbing voices of a mother and father who had never stopped looking. I wasn't Mara the Burden. I was Elara Vance. And I was finally, legally, home.